So your journey in property, according to your website bio, was inspired by your mum. Is that right? She was into property or a property manager?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say inspired. Definitely wasn't my intention to get into property. I guess growing up, so she got into property when I was, early teens, and so I'd go along to property inspections with her, sit in the car bored, waiting, watching all these people go in and out, and then eventually she started dragging me in to help her with chattels, and I ended up doing a bit of admin for their company. They were quite small at the time, so it was just, maybe in the school holidays go and help out, data entry and stuff. But I always thought it was really boring. When I was a teenager, I was like, oh, this is a horrible job.
Who'd want to do this?
Yeah, my mum was always so stressed, and she was always. This was at the beginning of the kind of pea epidemic, so I was listening to all the horror stories that she came out with, and I couldn't think of anything worse. So I definitely didn't intend to get into it, but I guess now that I'm into it, I can see the appeal.
Yeah. And so back in those days with the properties, there used to be like a property management TV program on, and you'd see these property managers cruising around their car, going and dealing with all these issues. Was it similar to that sort of show for you? You were literally witnessing it in first hand, though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I guess I saw the very mild stuff. She wouldn't take me to evictions or anything like that. I can't imagine that would have gone down well. But yeah, I definitely saw, I guess, the more day-to-day stuff. So doing inspections. If their house was empty, she'd tell me to come in with her, and I'd sit there bored on her phone or whatever. But yeah, I guess I got to see the basic stuff, but then I heard a lot about all the crazy stuff that happens as well. Some of the situations she dealt with were scary. And I think that's why she ended up getting out of the industry. She was in it for about 10 years, and it just got too much. She'd kind of put in her time, and got to the point where they were able to, they became mortgage free, so she didn't really need to work full time anymore, and it just all organically worked out for them.
Nice, that's cool. And I guess you learn a lot it's almost like learning by osmosis if you're hanging around, following your mum around doing that sort of thing, and then it's probably funny that you end up knowing stuff that you didn't know you knew, and it's like, oh yeah, I've heard about that before, I know how that works, or I've heard about certain things happening, and it's quite a funny way to learn, when you're just kind of soaking it in from your parents usually. Yeah.
It's funny actually, because me and my mum used to go for walks around the neighbourhood, and she would just became obsessed with houses. We'd be walking around and she's like, oh, look at that fence, and look at, she'd point out all these things, and I just thought, there's a cool car there, or there's a dog, why are you focusing on the house?
Yeah.
And now I understand, because now I'm looking at apartment buildings. Every time I drive past, I'm like, oh, that's a bit funny, or you're looking at the piping, and I get it. But at the time it was just like, oh, stop talking about houses, it's boring.
It's a curse, right? It's everywhere you go, you're sort of being critical about things, or looking for broken things, going, oh, there's a light out, or there's some rubbish, or it is a curse. I've said that on this podcast to a few people in various industries. They end up sort of they can't escape it. They're like, no matter what industry you're in, you're always looking at the critical parts of, if you're a sparky, you're probably looking at lights and things, and I don't know, it's just human nature, I guess. Yeah, whatever we're doing. And so before you joined Active, you were in the UK. And in the UK, I remember this from your interview, and I want to talk about your interview later on actually, because I remember a key thing from your interview which I thought was really cool. But you're in the UK doing a similar job to a building manager?
Yeah, it's the title was Property Management Officer.
Right.
And it's very different in the UK. I guess what we would call property managers, they call estate agents.
Oh, yeah.
And so even though that was the title, my role was day-to-day managing the common areas. So pretty much a building manager. I worked for a social housing agency, so they provided social housing as well as leasehold properties, so to help people get into purchasing properties. And I managed leasehold buildings. So it was very very different and very similar. I guess the main difference is that the company I worked for, they owned the buildings, so everything. So from setting the budget, I would be setting the budget, much like here we have the body corporate managers. I was managing the building and setting the budget and doing the accounts at the end of the year, and proposing fee increases, and everything came from me. And that was actually really difficult, because I guess you get blamed for everything. If you're putting up the price, it's you. Why are you doing this? Why have you decided to put up the price? We can't afford this. This isn't. Or if something breaks in the building, well, you own the building. Why did you? And you built the building, so why did you build it like that? And there was a lot of hostility towards the company I was working for. There was, I think, because I guess it's kind of like, here we have got kainga ora. There's all that historical resentment that builds up, and there was a lot of that, and it was a very high turnover job as well. So, they were kind of sick of seeing new property managers, and so when I came in, it was like, oh, another one. And it's really hard to build those relationships.
God, that sounds familiar at the moment, crikey. We know what that's about. And so how did you get into that role? Like, what did you do in New Zealand before you went to the UK?
I literally stumbled into that role.
Right.
So before I left New Zealand, I worked for Bay Corp for 5 years.
Oh yeah. That's another industry where you'd be hated on a fair bit.
It was a great company to work for, and I don't regret it. I learned a lot, and I grew a lot as a person. I did 3 years in actual debt collection, and then I moved into an account manager role. So I was, I guess, more of a sales position. But it required some really thick skin and a good support system, because there was some days where you're like, I cannot do this anymore. You're just getting berated,
And that would have put you in good stead though for for the role in the UK. It sounded like you have to have pretty thick skin there to be dealing with, I guess, the certain residents or people you're dealing with on a regular basis. You'd have to have a pretty thick skin, wouldn't you?
Definitely. It's funny, when I went to the UK, so when I moved over, I actually got a visa for Italy, because I fell in love with Italy when I was there. When I went over with my sister a year prior, and we then decided to go over together. I fell in love with Italy, and I thought, okay, I'd love to live there. So I got a visa with the intention of living there for maybe 6 months, a year. Got there, and it eventuated that getting a visa was only the first step. I didn't realise it was really strict to actually kind of get your permanent sign-off. So I thought what I had was good to go. I'd go there and I could just live. But I arrived, and they're like, cool, you've got 7 days to tell us where you're going to be, like your permanent address. You need a job offer.
Oh, heck.
And you can't move from that location for 6 months. And for me, it was like, well, God, I was planning to come here and travel around and find out where I want to be first. So that ended up not happening. I ended up volunteering at a animal rescue for about a month, which was a great experience.
That'd be cool.
No one spoke English, so it was very immersive.
Do the dogs understand English? Or the animals?
Well, my favourite was a rooster called Pietro. He was just, he'd come and sit on you and do other things. He was a funny guy.
The feathered alarm clock, the old rooster.
That was great. But then I had my UK visa as well, so I headed over there, and I was doing some temp jobs. Just my intention was to travel, and I just needed to make some money while I was doing that. And one of the temp jobs was this property management role. And I thought, I'll give it a go. If I don't like it, it's temp. And within the first week, I was like, this is actually really cool.
Pretty cool,
It was just, every day was different. It was a great culture. The company had a great culture and environment, all quite young and just really supportive. So I kind of just fit right in and was like, this is awesome. got into it, and then ended up applying for they had a permanent role that came up, and got that. And we had quite a period of change. They had a company merger, and there was a lot of changes, and I ended up stepping into like a leadership role where I was kind of training new staff and rolling out the CRM system that they introduced, and I just really loved it. I didn't expect to, and there was definitely parts of it that were tricky, but yeah.
It's part of the challenge, though, is like having those problems that you got to solve, and like you say, every day is different, and that resonates with what we do in the building management world. No 2 days are the same. Yeah. Were there many other Kiwis over there that you're working with?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I thought I'd be the special one, but no, there was plenty of Aussies and Kiwis, and a lot of them were on 2-year visas, so as their time for their visa came up, they'd leave. But the company actually hired a lot of Kiwis and Aussies because we're just great workers.
Yeah, thick skin, tough.
Yeah.
Problem solvers.
So it was very very diverse, mixed backgrounds.
What do you think what was the cause of the turnover? Was it like were the people was it not what they expected, or did they just get a bit burnt out, or what was it?
Probably a mix of both. It's definitely not for everyone. And usually you could see within the first few weeks whether someone would make it.
Right.
You could just tell how they were handling situations, and just their general happiness. You could generally see quite quickly that it's not really for them.
Yeah, because it's like relentless. Like that's a word that I've sort of started to use a bit more lately. There's just it's ongoing. I think some people get used to they have more of like a project mentality where you've got a start and a finish. And we have projects, I guess, within our workflow and stuff, but there's no real, there's a start, there's no real finish to it.
No,
and it's just that constant sort of, it's not so much grind is the wrong word, but there's always something to do, and there's no end in sight, I guess, because the building doesn't have an end. It's just going to be there for 50 or 100 years or whatever. And I think some people struggle with that concept of they feel like they're not achieving because they're not getting to an end. But I think every day or every week or every year of these buildings is like you're ticking things off and you're achieving things. So that's just my sort of view on that. Rightly or wrongly, just an opinion, I guess.
I guess from my observation, that's not the part of it that puts people off. It's people that put people off.
Right.
It's that's always been the breaking point that I've noticed. And I mean, I've definitely been at breaking point myself, where if you've just got one particular person who is making your life hell. I had a lady in the UK who was, she'd email me 3 or 4 times a day, and she was the type of unreasonable person who, no matter what you said, she was never happy. There was always something else, and she wouldn't listen or take on board what I was saying. It was always like, well, no, but what about this? And it got to a point where we had to put like a communication plan in place because it became harassment.
Bloody hell.
And she was getting really abusive, and we ended up making.
Was she a tenant?
She was a leaseholder.
A leaseholder, yeah.
So she had owned her apartment for 15 odd years, and we called her the bird lady because there was pigeons on the roof, and it was our fault.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because
But
they
she
were driving
fed
her
them.
crazy.
Yeah. Did she feed them?
No.
Oh, surprising.
No, I know. Yeah, sometimes they do. But she'd take photos of the pigeons' feet because she had a skylight, and she'd be like, "They're taunting me," And it became. We had to laugh about it. It was like, "That's the pigeon lady again." But that's the kind of person she was. It was like, you need to do something. It's like, well, you live in London. There's pigeons everywhere.
Yes.
What can we do? We can't shoot them.
Yeah.
So we put a communication plan in place for her where it was a Excel spreadsheet, and basically it was you put the date and your query, but you need to kind of summarise it because she'd go off on these tangents. It'd be like a 4-page email and then
from
it'd be
starting
3
with
times a
pigeons
day.
but ending up in God knows where.
And you didn't know what she was trying to say, and that actually worked.
Oh yeah.
She hated it at first and made a complaint against me that I even suggested it, but it worked. And we, that ended up being the way that everyone in the company communicated with her.
Brilliant. What do they call that? The Monique solution or something like that?
Yeah, I have to copyright that.
Gotta love a spreadsheet. Yeah. And it's funny, like just putting a little process in place like that, something quite simple but very effective. It did the job, obviously. And good to know that there's nutters like that in the UK, not just in Auckland. As we're well aware. And so, like, COVID must have put a stop to your plans, because you came back sort of, was it mid 2020, right?
Yes. Obviously it was, I think, February, March, that it all kind of went down, 2020. So prior to COVID hitting, being London, we didn't have cars like we do here. We'd catch the train to go and do our inspections, which, transport over there is great, so it worked well.
It's reliable.
Yeah, great and fast and cheap.
Everything Auckland transport is not.
So yeah, it worked well, and it was so bizarre how it all happened, because you saw the news article about this virus in China, and you straight away think, oh, poor them, and then go back to your life.
Yeah.
And then the company put out this big thing saying, it's spreading, and we might need to start working from home. And then the day that they sent the email saying tomorrow you have to work from home, it's your last day, we all kind of said we all had a really big chat about it, because it was so surreal when it all happened. It was like, oh my God, it's like the zombie apocalypse. And we said goodbye to each other as though, see you next week, have a good holiday working from home. And it just went on and on. Yeah. So
weeks turned into months. Yep.
Yeah, and we weren't allowed to go to inspections. Like here, it's building management's an essential service. Over there it was, no, you cannot leave your home. So we ended up having to get all of our laptops and stuff at home, and home was a 1-bedroom room in an apartment. There was no common area, like no lounge.
Oh shit.
So
it was like a studio type thing.
We were in a 3-bedroom, but we were flat sharing, and there was no lounge. There was a kitchen, but there was nowhere to gather or sit. So it was very isolating, really, really isolating. And to go from going to the office every day, I'd walk to the office because it was a 20-minute walk, to going to my inspections, to literally being stuck in this tiny space. Wow. My partner was a chef, so he lost his job straight away, and he'd sit there playing PlayStation, annoying me while I was trying to work.
How inconsiderate.
Yes, I know. So yeah, it was really challenging, and it was a big test to my mental health. It was just such a big shock. We'd come to the other side of the world to travel, and all of that finished, and our whole lives were upended for 7 months. Shit. We had 7 months like that.
So at what point did you make the decision to actually come back to home, New Zealand?
My visa was running out. I was on a 2-year visa, so it was inevitable anyway, but that was not how we planned to spend our last year in the UK. Like, we had already booked a trip to Russia, a trip to Morocco. We were going to stop in at South Africa on the way home, and all of that was cancelled. We probably couldn't have afforded to do it anyway, because we were on one income for so long. It just, everything changed. And yeah, so I mean, we were going to have to come home anyway, but it just, everything was more complicated. Getting flights home was...
Because there were none.
Oh, there was none, and it was double the price. My partner's French, so we had to apply for a special visa for him to come back, and we had to do the quarantine, and it was just a very chaotic few months and very stressful.
It seems like a long time ago now, the way, and I remember it being, I agree with what you said about being like surreal, because I don't think we took it that serious to start with, and we were all like, oh, it'll be over soon, and it's it's only a cold type thing, but just the way that it ramped up and escalated, and that was pretty full on. And so when you got back to New Zealand, you obviously had to go through quarantine, so another 2 weeks locked up by yourself pretty much. How did you find the quarantine?
It was, we made very productive use of our time. We both needed jobs, so I think I applied for this job while I was in quarantine.
Yeah.
It was a great opportunity to knuckle down and I guess spruce up our CVs, and there was nothing else to do. It was incredibly boring because my sister, my partner, and I all came back together, and so we had a twin share room. So my partner and I were on one side, my sister on the other side. The first 3 days were great. It was like, oh, this is exciting, cool. We get the meals delivered to us. And after day 3, my sister locked that door. We did not see her. I think she got sick of us. Yeah, I mean, and you run out of things to talk about. It was all very exciting in the beginning, and then it was like, well, staring out the window at the Waikato River because we were in Hamilton.
Really?
Yeah, they drove us down on a bus. There was nothing up here.
Oh, shoot.
They're all full. So yeah, that was a horrible experience, if I'm being honest. At the time, there was a lot of media opinions about Kiwis coming back, and that they're using taxpayers' money, and why they're coming back now, and there was just a lot of negativity and a really bad vibe in the media. And it kind of felt like we were unwanted, and we were being judged for coming back. There was a couple of months where it was like that, and it happened to be when we came back. And it was, it just had a really weird feel about it.
Kind of sucks, like you feel like you're not welcome back in your home country and stuff.
It did feel like that, because there was all the articles about there not being flights, and all the Kiwis flocking back, and there was a lot of negative articles about Kiwis returning, and that there's not enough accommodation, and just it was horrible at the time. I
guess it was how people were dealing with, because no one really knew what a pandemic was or how to deal with lockdowns and all the resulting consequences and stuff. And so people just resorted to like sort of negativity and hatred and kind of a sad reaction, really. And you look back on it now and you go, man, there was some pathetic attitudes back then. When people were just doing their best to try and deal with the problem that we were presented with, and one of them was trying to get home. And so when you actually came for the interview, if we could talk about that, I got to the point in the interview, because we met at a cafe, I think, and I got to a point in the interview where I said, all right, have you got any questions I normally ask, have you got any questions about the company or for me or whatever? And yours was classic, and you go, well, yes, I do actually. And you reached into your pocket and you pulled out like an A4 piece of paper. And I was like, holy shit, I feel like I'm being interviewed now. And I was like, this is cool. And so you proceeded to ask me a whole bunch of questions. I thought that was awesome. Good tactic.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really important that I'm joining a company that I want to join. There's so many jobs out there. And for me, I guess coming from a job that I loved, it was like, I want to keep going with that. I want to keep, enjoying what I do every day, because that's so important. And I've never had it before where I wake up and I'm like, cool, I'm going to work. I'm excited for what's going to happen this week. So it was really important that I asked those questions to figure out, one, what the culture was like, what you were like. And I was interviewing you. Yeah,
well, that's bloody good. And I actually think I find it strange that more people don't. I think so many people are intimidated by the interview process, or they're not comfortable with it, that they just sort of they sit there and they kind of clam up a bit, and they ask, or they give you like generic answers, and it's like, mate, just chill out, we're just having a chat, pretty much like we're doing now, and that's the way that we tend to interview people. I don't want to hear, I read through their CV, I don't want to hear their CV, I just want to hear them as a person. And that gives you a far better insight into what they're like than reading through a resume. So I just thought that was absolute classic, and I think you actually asked me more questions than I asked you that day. So it was cool. Yeah, but and then so you came into Active and stuff, and you had your like a portfolio of buildings. Was it similar to the work that you've been doing back in the UK?
Yeah, there was a lot of similarities. What I liked was that we don't do the accounts.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was doing that in the UK, and it was my most hated part of the job. I'm not really a numbers person, so that part really stressed me out. So to come here and be like, cool, don't even worry about that, and I've got someone who's specially doing that.
Yeah, that's the body corp manager's role in our industry, I guess. That's good to have them doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And I must say, when we did the accounts in the UK, that time of the year, it took us away from managing the building. For those however many weeks we were doing the audit, you couldn't do your job. So it makes sense to have it separated like that, and have one person focusing on the finances and one person actually managing the building. It works so much better. And that's definitely something that I love about the role here, is that I can focus on what I enjoy.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so actually, leading question, what do you enjoy about the role? Like, what do you find are the enjoyable parts of, say, what you do on a daily basis that you get a lot of satisfaction out of?
I definitely like when we do achieve things. Like you say, you don't always get to finish a project, but when you do, it's actually really cool to look back and be like, I did that. And to have, especially when people recognise that and they're like, oh, cool, you've made such a big difference. We've recently installed a gate at one of my buildings where we've had, people doing all sorts in the car park because it's been open to the public, and the work that's created for me has been a lot. So now we've got a gate, no one can get in, and I've had quite a few people say, oh, it's so good to have that gate now. When people recognise it, that's really satisfying.
And you think, why did they take 15 years to get a gate? Install the gate, problem solved. Yeah.
I mean, other than that, I think the fact that I'm always learning, I'm never going to know everything about building management. That there's always going to be something that I don't know, and that's what I enjoy. I think usually, I'm 2 years into the job now with Active. Usually by the 2-year mark, you're kind of like, oh, I know everything now. Whereas I'm still like, there's still a lot I don't know. There's still a lot to learn. There's still questions to ask, and there forever will be. Yeah.
Well, aside from Active, so 16 years for Active, and then we did about 3 years prior to Active with a couple of companies. So that's nearly 20 years. Christ. Still don't know everything. Yeah. So never claim to, and never will, because you're right. There's so many different factors, and so many like curveballs that you can get, and then you pile in the people on top of that who can complicate things or make things easier for you. But man, you're constantly learning, and the ability to learn off one building, and then you go, oh, I know how to solve that problem at another building now, and that provides really good value, I think, for our team, but also for our clients. They to be able to have that pool of, I guess, of knowledge and resource to call on, whether it's just yourself, your own experiences, or your fellow teammates and stuff. That's valuable. Did you find, was it quite a sharing sort of culture back in the UK as well?
Definitely, and it was so needed, and it's really important to be open to asking questions. I think that's a big telltale of whether you'll fail or succeed in the industry, is whether you can put your pride aside and just say, hey, I'm not actually sure about this. It's just so important, because you can't make it up.
Yeah.
People are going to find out that you don't know what you're doing, or you're going to make a mistake, and neither of those options work. So, I think having the team support, being able to bounce ideas off each other, is just so valuable.
There's a classic saying that we actually had it as one of our early days, like Active values. Must have been about 10 years ago now, but it was basically along the lines of bullshit grows mushrooms. So if you don't know what you're doing, and you're trying to you bullshit people, then they find out eventually, and you look like an idiot. So just being straight up, and there's no harm in saying, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. That's a line that a lot more people should sort of be aware of, because you can't know everything, you don't know everything, you might forget something, But to say, just to admit it, be upfront, and then say, but I'll find out for you, shows that you want to actually, that's part of customer service. Yeah. So it's almost like a bit of a mantra, really. What parts of the role do you find frustrating? Like there's the good parts, obviously, but you got to balance that up with a few things, and we all know it's the things that we don't like about the role. Like, what would they be for you?
One thing I can't stand is unreasonable people. I can deal with all sorts of people. I feel like I can get along with most people, but an unreasonable person who is not willing to have an open mind or to change their view, that's just something you can't beat. You can't work with someone who doesn't want to work with you. And I think that's the most frustrating part of the role, is that there's always one person in every building who is just unreasonable, and you cannot reason with them. You cannot provide them a solution or an answer because they don't want to solve the problem. They just want to be angry. Yeah,
totally. And I think COVID probably either tuned out more of those people, or those people just got even worse. Totally. That's, you hit the nail on the head there. They actually don't want to listen, or they don't want a solution. They just want to complain and bloody whinge about things. And Karen, is it?
Yeah.
Karen?
Yeah. Capital K.
Capital K. Not anyone in particular named Karen, but obviously referring to the the term that's come out of the last couple of years. Unfortunately, poor Karens that actually have the name Karen. Poor things. But some people just don't want to help, and they just rather complain. I don't know. Maybe they get a hard time during their life, away from the building. Like they might get kicked around themselves at work a bit, and they're like, now's my chance to, to make someone else miserable. I don't know, but yeah.
No, I think that's something that I've had to learn, and the pigeon lady taught me that. To be completely honest,
pigeon lady.
She drove me to a point where I started going crazy because I was like, I can't do anything right. She's making me feel like I'm not doing my job. And it took the support of my colleagues and my leaders to be like, no, you're doing everything right. She's just crazy.
She's the nutter.
And it's taken a while, but now that I accept that and I can recognise those people now and just go, actually, there's nothing I can do to help this person. That's how I've stayed sane. Is just recognising, okay, I've tried, there's nothing I can do. And just kind of let it go.
That's a skill in itself, just to be able to recognise that. And like you say, you had your support of your teammates to go, hey, don't take it personally. She's just awkward and unreasonable. Yeah, I get it now. And you'll save yourself a lot of time with people like that in the future, because you start to identify those people really quickly. They're a bit of a like an energy soak hole. Like they just bloody drain you. And there's a lot of people out there like that. And like we've just said, you can't help them. No. Okay, fine. Let's move on and do something more worthwhile. Yeah. What's a typical day like for you in the life of a building manager? From say start to finish. What's a typical day like?
Yeah.
Not that there are typical days. Sorry.
No. Yeah.
No 2 days are the same. So.
Yeah, it's my role's changed a lot in the last 2 years. I mean, my portfolio has changed, and that in itself has just completely shifted my role. I guess a year and a half ago, I was managing 4 buildings, but 80% of my time was in one, and that building was my black hole. It was sucking the life out of me.
Yes.
And that's where all of my focus went. And now I've got 6 buildings, but I feel like only 80% of the workload that I had, and it's not draining.
Amazing.
And I now live on site, so I generally will start and finish my day at the building that I live at. It just makes sense. So I'll arrange, any contractor visits, either in the morning or the afternoon, just so I can. It's quite lovely living on site because I literally just have to walk down the stairs and my office is there. So I can make my coffee, walk down the stairs with my mug and check my emails. Usually I'll meet a contractor in the morning. There's a lot going on at this building at the moment, so a lot of projects. A lot of contractor meetings. I'll generally skim through my emails, check if anything's happened the night before. or if there's anything urgent that's come in. You know, sometimes I'm lucky and I'll have 5 emails overnight. Sometimes, more often than not, it's 45 emails overnight. So a quick skim through them, just to check that nothing's urgent, and just prioritise things in my head of, okay, that's what I need to do today, and then kind of plan my day from there, because I feel like I usually have a rough idea of what I'm going to do that day, but it changes.
Yeah, you can throw a spanner in there.
Oh, there's always a spanner.
Yeah.
So, I might be like, okay, I'm going to start my day here and then do this. But then if I check my emails and there's been a leak overnight, then that changes and I have to cancel that contractor and go there.
So you got to be able to think on your feet.
Absolutely.
And that's where, and organisation as well. And, when Kylie did the first podcast, we talked about women in the industry. And it's my opinion, and I've said it to a lot of people, that I want to have more women in this company and in the industry, because I think that you guys' natural skill set. God, I hope I don't get in shit for saying something about women, but it's a positive. Natural skill set of women tends to fit this role better now, and what that is for me is communication. Far better at. You guys are way better at communicating than us Durongos. Your detail, and then organisation, like those 3 things there, and it actually lines up pretty well with identify, solve, communicate, and that's where I just think like that natural skill set far better for the industry and for the company. Not saying like there are bloody good building managers that are guys too. I'm not putting anyone down, but I just want to see more women in the industry, because it's largely been a fairly male-dominated industry. And I'll ask a question from a point of view, and Kylie has issue with this, and I say to her, don't worry about what other people think, but she has an issue with, she thinks people don't take her seriously because she's a woman, and when you're dealing in a predominantly male environment, and I'd say you may have been affected by this. You turn up to a meeting and there's a whole bunch of dudes there, and you speak up and they kind of go, whatever. Have you found that?
I definitely have. I think especially when I first came on board, I mean, whenever there's a change in building manager, there's always that trust building period. There's always that kind of time where you're having to prove yourself, but I felt like it was intensified for me. I took over from a guy who'd been here a couple of years, and he had really good relationships with his committees, and I think, when I came on board and I first met my committees, I immediately felt a wall. There was straight away like I don't think you'll be able to do this. And it actually took quite a few months. I'd say, for one of my buildings in particular, about 6 months for the chairperson to stop harassing me. For him to be like, okay, you can do it. You've proven yourself.
You're capable.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
And that was a long time, and I felt like I was just, everything I did was being monitored, and if I stepped wrong, then I was out. It felt like a lot of pressure, and I've gotten to the point now with that chairperson that I feel like he just leaves me to. I never hear from him now. He just, he trusts that I'm going to do a good job. And it's a shame that it took that long, but I agree that, there does need to be more representation. And the only way to change that is to actually have women that are in the role doing a good job.
Totally, yep. And I've seen, been advertising recently, and I've seen that we've been getting a lot more applications from women, which is great. And so I'm lining women up to interview, and it's a big thing for me. I just think there needs to be more of a balance. But also the old school people have got to, get their head out of their ass and realise that it's not, don't judge people by their gender, I guess is the right word these days, but judge them by their skill level and their the outcomes and what they produce, not so much if they're a man or a woman or not. Because I think it works the other way too, where you might have a male that's underperforming, but because he's a male, it's like, he's alright, it's just acceptable. If that was a woman underperforming, it's like, she's bloody useless. And I've heard that as recently as in the last 12 months, and it's like, man, get over yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be hard to attract women to the role. You know, I can definitely see, if I use property management as an example, property management in New Zealand, it's a bit more glamorous. You know, you get to dress up nice, you can have your nails done, you're in makeup every day. I've tried to have my nails done, and every time I break a nail, because it's just such a hands-on job, which is, you know, I love that about the job, but it's not for everyone. And, you know, that might put a lot of women off. And it is very much get dirty. Yeah,
sometimes you've got to roll up your sleeves, right? And sometimes you do have to maybe stick your hand in a bloody drain or something, or, you know, up in a light fitting or what have you. So from that point of view, it's, I don't know, maybe there's a solution to that. Maybe invent some really full-on acrylic nails that don't break or something. I don't know. Yeah, but that's true. I mean, it's is there a way to glamorise what we do? Probably. Do I have the brain power to think about that? No. But I'm sure, you know, if we got one thing that Kylie's going to do soon, she's going to get all the active women together and go out for do like a lunch or a dinner or something. I was like, man, that's a cool idea, because you actually, by the time you get through, you know, the team in the office, some of the concierge staff down at the other bigger buildings and stuff, then there's actually quite a good group there. That'd be a cool thing, and maybe that's, you guys have a bit of a workshop on how to spa day. There you go. Do the nails that don't break. Yeah, but maybe there's like a bit of a workshop as part of that to go, okay, how can we actually, you know, make it more I don't know, comfortable or glamorous or whatever you want, you know, and just there'd be some cool feedback that would come out of a session like that, I think. All right, so I guess we've talked enough about the building management side of things. And one thing that I wanted to chat with you about was about your personal journey with weight loss. And I still can't believe, like, you know, from how much weight you actually lost. Do you want to just talk us through that whole sort of, I guess, start to, I guess you're not finished, essentially, it's an ongoing sort of thing, I guess, but, you know, where did it sort of start for you, and how much weight did you actually lose?
So, I guess I've always had a problem with my weight. It's been kind of a lifelong battle for me, just constantly trying different diets and, you know, different exercise. My mum was a personal trainer as well. She's jack of all trades as well. You know, so it's been a bit of a journey for me, and I've really struggled with like food addiction. Sugar is my drug. So, you know, I guess being in the lockdown, stuck inside, and I really leant on food, and I gained a lot of weight. And it got to the point when I got back to New Zealand, I was at my heaviest weight. I'd never been this heavy. I think I got up to 145, 142. It was massive for me, you know, and I was really starting to feel just unwell. I was tired all the time. I couldn't do anything, you know. I couldn't just go out for a walk. It was, I wouldn't even agree to go on anything, you know, anything like that with my friends, because it was, I was too embarrassed. You know, I didn't want to see them, you know, for them to see me huffing and puffing and struggling and sweating, and it got to a point where I couldn't tie my shoelaces without having to do it in a couple of breaths, you know, because my stomach had gotten so big that I couldn't kind of bend over. So it was, I guess I reached my own breaking point where I was like, I can't go on like this. You know, I was continuously trying different diets, and what would happen is I'd do a diet, and I'd restrict myself so much that I couldn't stick to it, because it just was not a sustainable diet, and then I'd binge, and it was just this really toxic cycle. So, you know, for me it was like, okay, what can I do? I feel like I've tried everything. I've spent so much money on all these different things, and I felt like, for me it was like, I need to do something really big here. And so I considered weight loss surgery, which initially I was very, very private about. You know, it was a very difficult decision. I feel like there's still a bit of a stigma around it. Not everyone, obviously, but even myself, you know, I think a few years ago, it's not really talked about, and there's this immediate assumption that it's like, oh, you chose the easy way, you're just going to go and pay someone to, and even when I made the decision, I felt like I was cheating. I felt like I was going to be judged for making that decision, that that I was lazy and that I couldn't do it myself, and there was a lot of emotion around it, and I actually didn't tell many people. I was, it was very close, my close circle. There was about maybe 8 people that I told. I asked them to keep it quiet because I just wasn't comfortable with my decision yet.
Were they supportive?
They were. Initially there was a bit of like, oh, are you sure you need to do this? We love you the way you are. There was a lot of that, but yeah, I feel like I did have to kind of justify myself to a few people, and it really explained why and why it was so important for me. But yeah, I did it. We came back with a little bit of savings from the UK, and so I funded my surgery, and it was not easy. It was not the easy way. It's been a hell of a journey. So I had my surgery in May last year, so nearly a year and a half post-op. It's gone bloody quick.
Crikey, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, May last year. Nearly a year and a half.
Oh, right.
Yeah, long time. That's gone so quickly. I think, we had that lockdown last year, and that was a few months at home. And obviously I came out of that and everyone was like, wow, you've lost all this weight.
Where have you gone? Where's Monique gone? Yeah, it was a bit like that.
Yeah. So that was a crazy journey. I had the gastric sleeve surgery, which is where they remove 80% of your stomach. And I had to do 4 weeks of OptiFast diet, which was basically shakes. So I'd have 3 shakes a day, and I was allowed 2 cups of green veggies.
Is that just to let the stomach sort of
shrink?
Yeah, shrinking, but I guess it's got to repair a little bit as well? Or?
It's the main purpose is to dissolve some of the visceral fat around your organs. Oh. So when they access your stomach, I think there's another organ on top, and they have to, I think it's your liver. They have to lift your liver. So it's the main point of that is to reduce the fat around the organ so that they can access it.
Right.
But also, yeah, it does in pass also shrink your stomach a little bit. And I've got to say that pre-op diet was nearly as hard as what came after, because at that point your stomach's still full size. You're used to eating a lot. Well, I was used to eating a lot. So I had a big stomach, and to go from overeating to shakes, that was hard.
Because you're always hungry? Always feeling hungry?
So hungry.
Yeah.
I just felt like I was starving myself, and it was, I definitely couldn't do it long term, and I wouldn't do it again. But, there was obviously a reason, and I knew that there was a finish line, so I kind of just held on hope, and obviously I wanted the surgery to be as safe as possible, so that kind of got me through. But then, I had the surgery. I was in a lot of pain. It was keyhole surgery, but because of all the movement and obviously the effect it had on my stomach, it was really, really painful, just in terms of moving, like getting out of bed, anything that required the use of your abs. And I couldn't eat, so I was on a liquid diet for, I think it was a week, maybe 2 weeks, which was horrible. I didn't feel like anything. I had to eat, it was just basically soup and shakes and water.
Because a lot of the pain's probably from, I don't know, but I'm just sort of guessing, when they actually do the surgery, like all those organs in there, they're not used to being rummaged around in and touched and moved, and so they probably get a bit of bruising on them, and it'd be like sort of trying to touch your eyeball. That's probably, I don't know, as an example, like those things don't get touched by human hands usually. So if someone's like, rummaging around in there, they get knocked around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, my stomach obviously had been cut, had a huge part of it taken away.
How much did they actually cut off?
They reckon 80 to 90%.
hell.
80 to 90%. So I feel like it's definitely stretched a little bit since then,
Yeah.
because initially I, maybe 2 spoonfuls and I was full. It was so tiny. And that was, the reason you have to transition from liquid to puree to soft foods, there was a very strict diet afterwards, is that your stomach is healing and you can't just jump back into normal eating because it'll probably break the stitches. So yeah, it was that in itself, just adjusting to eating again. Even when I transitioned from puree to soft foods, which was stuff like, what's a good example? I'm trying to think now.
Cheese?
Yeah, like
Yogurt?
soft cheese.
Yeah.
Yogurt was part of the puree stage, but there was things like cooked beans, eggs. Even from there, and then when I was able to transition from soft foods to normal foods, there was such a big learning period, because in my head I was like, I really feel like, I don't know, chow mein, whatever my partner would have it, and I'd be like, oh cool, I can eat that now. And I'd take a mouthful and it would come straight back up.
Oh, really?
There was just so much that my stomach didn't agree with.
Wow.
It was like, no, too much salt, too much sugar, too much fat.
It's like having a brand new stomach.
Yeah.
That doesn't remember.
No.
Yeah.
And that was the hard thing, I think, was my stomach knew, but my brain didn't.
Yeah.
My brain was still thinking, okay, yeah, I love this food, I want to eat that. So it's been a big learning period, and I still am learning. There's still things that I'll eat that do not go down well, and I really have to be mindful. I think one of the biggest things is I can't eat and drink at the same time, so I have to wait 30 minutes after a meal and before a meal to have a drink.
As in, like water or a glass
Water.
of wine or something? Yeah, water.
Which is,
really?
it's such a normal part of culture that you have a drink with your meal. So it's a really difficult
You
thing.
could be really mindful of that, eh?
Oh, it's actually horrible.
To write it on your hand or something.
I sometimes set a timer. I'm like, counting down, because you get really thirsty. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, depending on what you eat.
Yeah.
If you have like a real salty feed or something, you'd be like, I just wanted a glass of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been an adjustment. Yeah.
So what's the magic number at the moment? Like, how much have you actually lost since then? I'm dying to hear that number.
Yeah. So the last time I weighed myself, which was about 2 months ago, I was 71. So about 63 kgs lost.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
63.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's staggering, eh?
It's amazing.
That's another person.
It is.
Oh.
Well, yeah, I actually lifted up Jared when I lost to Jared's worth of weight.
Yeah. Jared's probably not even 63.
I think he was 56. I did ask him. I was like, when I reach your number.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
63.
amazing. And honestly, I could have never lost that by myself. Yeah, it's there's been so much along the way that I couldn't have done it without the surgery, and I'm so grateful that I was in a position to be able to fund that for myself, because there are so many people who need it and just can't afford it or are on the waiting list.
Oh, look, that was just awesome to listen to. I'm glad you're comfortable to share that, because it's a hell of a story, hell of a journey, and it's very personal. Like, so appreciate that you could actually feel comfortable to talk about that. But fuck, 63 kgs, and I don't think it's cheating. I think it's smart. I think you're utilising the current state of technology out there. We can do these things now, so therefore why not? And it's for a bloody good reason. It's not like a process where you're having your face tightened up or whatever. It's actually like a process that's gonna potentially prolong your life.
Yeah.
So if you'd have kept going how you were, who knows what might have happened. But now you've given yourself your life back, essentially, right? You've literally taken a person off your back.
On my front.
Yeah, wherever they were holding on. Yeah, wherever. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I do feel like I've got a new lease on life. Everything is easier. I won't say I've got more energy because I'm always bloody tired. Came out of the womb tired. But yeah, I feel like I can do things. Even the job, you know, one of my buildings, the lift only goes up to the 3rd floor, and I have to walk 4 flights, you know, at least once a week. And that I used to have to stop on every flight of stairs, and now no problems.
Wow, amazing. It's those little things, you know, aside from the big things, it's the little things too that you sort of, that you realise that you can do now. I guess that's why you, like, I'm going to say that's why you bought those boots, because they, no worries doing up all the bloody 10 up laces and stuff. You're like, I'll do up laces all bloody day if I have to. Yeah, no, that's cool. Man, that's amazing, eh? You must be proud of yourself.
I am, yeah, and I'm kind of comfortable in saying that now, and I'm comfortable in talking about it, because I think it needs to be talked about. I think it needs to be normalised. You know, obesity is a big problem in New Zealand. There's a lot of people struggling out there, and you know, I think we need to break the stigma around weight loss surgery.
Do they actually have like any support groups and that you get in touch with after you've had your surgery, and do they provide any support and people you can talk to?
So the clinic I went through they provide 2 years of post-op support. To be honest, I haven't been that happy with it. I won't mention the name of the place, but you know, they were meant to provide a dietitian, and I feel like the dietitian just ticks boxes, asks me a standard set of questions, and it's just not very customised. So I feel like the support I've got from the clinic hasn't been amazing. I did make some great connections. So there was a lady having the same surgery as me a day before me, and we met at the hospital, you know, doing our walk around, our stumble around, because you have to move the gas or whatever. And so we connected and, you know, added each other on Facebook, and there's a group of us, 5 of us, who all had surgery in the same week, and we've kept in touch. And you know, especially in the beginning stages, it was so helpful to be able to, you know, to message them and be like, oh my God, I can't stop throwing up. I'm in so much pain, you know, just to normalise it.
And you're all going through the same thing.
Yeah, that was so invaluable. I can't imagine if I didn't have them, you know, how I would have got through it. Because no one understands if you haven't been through it.
I'd love to know what the combined weight loss is amongst your group of 5. Imagine that if you added it all up.
Oh, that's something I haven't done, but I mean, off the top of my head, I'd definitely over 250.
Shit, a quarter of a ton. Man, staggering, amazing. Blows my mind actually. You know, it's pretty bloody inspirational, and especially when, you know, you get the benefits of just like you say before, you feel like you've got your life back. You know, that's the big thing. Yeah, just those you know, downstream benefits of the weight loss. Has it affected your singing voice?
No, it hasn't.
That's good. That's a good thing. Yeah, Monique's a bloody good singer, by the way. We have to have a staff do and get you on the microphone again.
Yeah.
Mate, thanks for even just doing the podcast. It's been such a good chat. It's been just over an hour now. Time flies.
Jeez,
fun. Yeah, but I really appreciate your time and just especially about sharing the, you know, your weight loss journey, and it's inspirational, and you should be bloody proud of yourself. But yeah, you know, we really appreciate the work that you do with Active. You know, you're well liked by the team, and you know, I think the progress that you've progress you've showed. I was going to say progression, got them mixed up, but the progress that you've showed, and you know, we've been able to, you know, we want to keep moving you forward too. Yeah, we think you're awesome. So yeah, thanks for being part of the team, but also just thanks for, you know, sharing the insight into building management, but your other, you know, journey as well. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Cool. No problem.